Welcome back, and this is Dr. Vishal Trivedi from Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering. And in this series of lecture series, we are discussing different aspects of digestion and absorptions. So, let us recap what we have discussed so far. So, what we have discussed is that we have what we have discussed is the anatomy or the structures of different parts of the alimentary canal. So, what we have discussed? We have discussed about the mouth followed by the buccal cavity. Within the buccal cavity, we have discussed the structure as well as different types of teeth present in the buccal cavity. We have discussed about the tongue, and we also mentioned about the saliva, buccal cavity followed by the pharyngeal cavity. And while discussing about the pharyngeal cavity, we have discussed how the pharyngeal cavity actually regulates the flow of material between the buccal cavity to esophagus, or the air passage from the nose to the trachea. Followed by, we have discussed about the stomach, and then followed by the small intestine and the large intestine. Regarding these organs, we have discussed about the external anatomy or the external structure, as well as we have discussed what are the different types of layers are present in forming these structures, and also what are the different functions of these different organs present in the alimentary canal. So, these are the main organs present in the alimentary canal, but all these organs are also have large quantity of accessory digestive organs, and these accessory digestive organs are also known as digestive glands. So, they are not the major organs which are present in the alimentary canal, but they have, without the help of these accessory organs or the glands, the digestion process cannot be accomplished. So, in today's lecture, we are going to discuss about the different types of glands which are present in the alimentary canal. So, what are the different glands which we are going to discuss? So, we are going to start from the buccal cavity. Within the buccal cavity, we have the salivary glands, followed by we have the glands in the stomach. These are called as gastric glands. Then, apart from salivary gland and gastric gland, we have some set of different glands which are also present, and these are liver, pancreas, and we also want to discuss the glands which are present in the small intestine, and these are called as intestinal glands. What we want to discuss in today's topic is that how these glands are actually helping the digestive process, what are the different components which are present in these individual glands, and what is their function. So, let us start with the salivary glands. So, salivary glands are present in the buccal cavity. Their main product which they secrete is known as saliva. Okay. And we have three different types of salivary glands which are present in the buccal cavity. These are known as parotid glands, uh, uh, sublingual glands and the submandibular glands. As you can see in the PowerPoint, the arrangement as well as the position of these different glands. So, as I said, we have three different types of glands. The one is called parotid gland, the other one is called as submandibular gland and the third one is called as sublingual glands. So, let us discuss about the parotid glands. Parotid glands are actually the glands which are present in our cheek just below the ear, and these glands are irregular and yellow in shape, and they are actually using the duct which is called as stenosis ducts, and these ducts are open in the vestibule. And if you have remember, I have discussed in my previous lecture that what is the region which is called as vestibule. The region just after the lip and in between the teeth is called as vestibule, and they secrete the content which is very close to the upper molar. Then the parotid glands are actually the site where the where the number of viruses or the bacterial actually infects, and one of the popular virus which actually infects these parotid glands are called as Paramoxyvirus, and that actually causes this gland to swell and it causes lot of pain, and this condition is called as mumps. The other gland which is also called as submandibular gland. The submandibular gland is actually present on the lower jaw, and they are putting their content or the material to into the buccal cavity through a duct called as Wharton ducts, and the secretion is coming just below, next to the middle incisors. The third salivary gland, which is also called sublingual gland, is present just below the tongue, and it is very close to the lower jawbone, and it pours its content through multiple ducts coming from the gland, and that is called as, these ducts are known as Rivian ducts. So, as you can see that all these three glands are actually secreting the content, and as I said in our discussion that the contents coming from the salivary glands are called as saliva. So, let us discuss what is the composition of the saliva. So, the composition of the saliva is mostly made up of water. So, what is the composition of saliva? It contains water, mostly 99%. Then it contains minor quantities of different types of salt. What are the salts it present? It contains sodium, potassium, chloride and bicarbonate. Apart from that, since the saliva is a site where the lot of death is happening, and as a result you will see a lot of dead cells also. So, it also contain the epithelial cell debris. Apart from that, it contains the important protein called as mucin. So, mucin is actually a protein which actually gives the sticky nature of the saliva, and that actually that makes the saliva very thick, and as a result the saliva remains in our buccal cavity and do lot of functions. In addition to this, because the buccal cavity is the primary site through which we take the from where the food is coming into our mouth the first time. It also has the antimicrobial substances. One of the popular antimicrobial substance present in saliva is known as lysozyme. So, lysozyme is actually working against the bacteria, and it actually kills the bacteria by lysing their membrane. On the other hand, the pH of the saliva is in the range of 6.7 to 6.8. So, if this is the composition of saliva, the next question will come, what will be the function of saliva? So, the function of saliva, as the composition itself reflects, it contains the major fraction of water. Okay. So, the first function could be that it keeps the moisture content intact of our buccal cavity. So, it keeps our buccal cavity moistened, and that actually means that it keeps the tongue, lips and the other structure present in the buccal cavity always wet with the help of saliva. Then the second is, because the water is a major component of the buccal cavity, it actually also dissolve the food content or food ingredients present in any particular food, and that dissolution actually helps in bringing the taste to the food. So, it actually helps in taste of food. Number 3, it actually mix the food along with the mix the food and help to make the bolus. And why this is important? Because once the food is formed into a form, consolidated in the form of a bolus, it actually helps to not only formation of bolus, but also for the formation for the mastication. So, it helps in formation of bolus, and it also helps in mastication, because once the bolus is formed, the complete bolus comes below the teeth, and that actually gives the more efficient mastication to churn the food into smaller pieces. As we said, the saliva has a pH of 6.7 to 6.8, and it also contains the large quantity of bicarbonate into the saliva, and as a result it also gives the buffering capacity or the. So, it works as a buffering agent to maintain the pH of our buccal cavity or the pH of our mouth. Antimicrobial agents are present, so it actually protects the buccal cavity from the infection. Number 7 and because there is a large quantity of saliva what we produce over the course of over a single day, it actually also being used to wash the different components of buccal cavity, means it actually been used to wash the teeth, the tongue as well as the other component of the buccal cavity. So, it is used for washing or rinsing buccal cavity. Number 8, saliva also contains the a digestive enzyme known as salivary amylase or the ptyalin. So, because of the presence of salivary amylase, it actually helps in digestion of the food. Especially carbohydrate, because the salivary amylase works on the carbohydrate. So, carbohydrate, as you can see, the carbohydrate digestion starts from the mouth itself. Now, our discussion about the salivary gland is done. So, now we will go back to the next gland, and that is the salivary gland present in the stomach, and that is called as the gastric glands. So, if you remember the previous lecture, in the previous lecture we have discussed that the stomach cell wall or the stomach wall is having the different layers, and the last layer, which was the epithelial layer, actually contains different types of glands to help in digestion. So, these are the gastric glands which are present in the stomach. So, as you can see, the different component of the gastric gland in a given PowerPoint slide, what you can see is the a photograph of the stomach. So, as we have discussed this structure in the previous lecture, and we have 4 different component. One is fundus, the cardiac, the body part, and the pyloric region. So, we have 4 regions within the stomach, and all these 4 regions contains the gastric glands. You have the gastric glands which are present in the cardiac region, and those are called as cardiac glands. These cardiac glands contains the goblet cells, and these goblet cells actually secretes the mucus. Then you have the glands which are present on the pyloric side, and these are called as pyloric glands, and the pyloric glands actually contains 2 different types of cells. One is called as goblet cells. So, goblet cells actually secrete the mucus, just like as we discussed for the cardiac glands, and then it also contains the enteroendocrine cells. These enteroendocrine cells actually secretes the hormones, and one of the popular hormone which is coming from the enteroendocrine gland is known as the gastrin. So, gastrin is an hormone which is secreted from the gastric gland or the pyloric glands, and their job is to stimulate the gastric gland to secrete large quantity of different content. But the major section of the gastric glands are present in the body part or the major part which is forming the stomach, and these are called as gastric gland or the principal gland. They are most abundant, and they have different types of cells, as you can see in this slide, that they have 4 or 5 different types of cells. They have goblet cells, they have oxygenetic cells, they have peptic cells, and then they have the enteroendocrine cells. These enteroendocrine cells are also of different types. So, let us start with the peptic cells. So, peptic cells are actually present in the gastric gland, and they produce 2 proenzymes. So, peptic glands actually produces the 2 proenzymes. Those are called as pepsinogen as well as and the prorenins, and they also secrete the active enzyme that is also called that is known as the gastric lipase. The prorenin is very predominantly secreted in the kids or the infants, and as a result the prorenin is actually that is why the infants can be able to digest the milk and the milk products. Then comes the oxalic acid, oxalic cells. The oxalic cells actually secretes the HCl and the Castle intrinsic factor. And HCl is actually required to maintain a very acidic environment of the stomach, so that all the other enzymes which are being secreted from the peptic cells are working optimally. Then we have the goblet cells. So, just like any other part of the stomach where they have a goblet cells, the goblet cells are also present in the fundic or the principal glands, and the function of these goblet cell in this portion also is to secrete the mucus. And then the last portion comes is the enteroendocrine cells. See, enteroendocrine cells are of different types, and their main job is to secrete the different types of signaling molecule or the hormones. And we have 4 different types of enteroendocrine cells. One is called G cell, and the G cell is, as name suggests, the G cell is actually the cell which actually secretes the gastrin. And as we discussed in the previous time also, that the gastrin is required to stimulate the gastric glands to secrete the gastric juice. Then they also have the D cells, and the D cell is actually secreting the somatostatin, and somatostatin is a hormone which actually counterbalance the activity of the gastrin. Means the gastrin stimulates the secretion of the gastric juices, whereas the somatostatin actually inhibits the secretion of gastrin from the G cells. Then you have the EC cells. The EC cells, they are actually secreting the 3 different molecules: histamine, motilin, and the 5-hydroxytryptamine. If you remember, when we were discussing about the stomach anatomy, we discussed that the stomach secretes large quantity of motilin, and that motilin is required to stimulate the churning activity in the mouth or the motions within the alimentary canal. Whereas, the 5-hydroxytryptamine, which is actually a precursor for the serotonin, is actually has a inhibitory effect on the secretion of gastric juice. So, actually the EC cells are maintaining a balance of secreting the gastric juice or inhibiting the gastric juice. And then lastly, because most of these glands are need to be regenerate, they also have the stem cells, and these stem cells are undifferentiated cells which are present in the gastric glands, and these gastric glands, these stem cells differentiate and to form either the G cell or the D cell or EC cells, so to provide a different types of cells. Now, we will discuss about the different function of the gastric glands. So, the function of gastric gland can be divided into 2 parts. A is that we have discussed that the gastric glands actually secretes large quantity of digestive enzymes. So, it could be related to function or the function done by the digestive enzymes. And so, most of the digestive enzyme which are being secreted within by the peptic cells in the stomach is required to secrete to digest the food material. And then we have the another function, that is called the B, and the B function comes by the gastric juices to secrete to the stomach to secrete the large quantity of acid. So, what is the function of acid in the secreted by the gastric glands? So, the function of the acid is, first function is to stop the digestion process of buccal cavity. So, the enzymes which are present in the salivary glands optimally work in the neutral pH or the pH in the range of 6.7 to 6.8, But as soon as these enzymes enter into the stomach, the pH turns into the 2 or 3 because with the help of acid, and that actually stops the digestion process done by these enzymes. Number 2, as we discussed that the peptic cells secretes two types of proenzymes. So, what is mean by proenzyme is that these enzymes are inactive or the present in the inactive form, and they need a proper activation to be working for the degradation of the food material. So, they also work for the activation of proenzyme. Number 3, it provides, as I said, it provides a very optimal low pH of pH 2 to 3. So, that all these enzymes which are getting activated, that is the rennin as well as the pepsin, should work optimally and digest the food material. Then it also do the denaturation of protein. So, as you know that if you denature a molecule, it actually increases the efficiency of these enzymes to digest them into the smaller components. Then it also works or helps in the digestion of food. And since the acid is maintaining a very low pH, it also provides the protection within the stomach for any kinds of infection. Apart from these two components, we also have third component, and that is we have a large quantity of mucus being secreted by these goblet cells, and the purpose of having this mucus is that it protects the inner lining of the stomach with the action of these acid as well as the enzymes. And once there is a breakdown of this mucus lining, that actually causes a disease condition known as ulcer. And this is a condition where you will see a large quantity where the mucus lining is removed, and then the acid actually reaches to the epithelial lining, and then it degrades the cell wall, and as a result the person develops the several types of abscesses, and that actually causes the bleeding as well as the discomfort to the person. So far what we have discussed is that the anatomy of different digestive glands, and in this series what we have discussed so far is the glands which are present in the buccal cavity, that is salivary gland, and the gland which is present in the stomach. So, now we will continue with the third gland which is present in the alimentary canal, and that is the liver. So, as you can see in the given slide, the structure of the position of liver within the alimentary canal. So, liver is a reddish brown organ present on the right side of the abdomen, and it is just present below the diaphragm, okay? And it is the largest gland present in the human body, and the liver has a very unique anatomy from the outside, that its upper surface is concave and it is connected to the diaphragm, because the liver is present just below the diaphragm. So, it has to be connected to the diaphragm, so that it will remain intact within the peritoneal cavity by a suspensory ligament. Technically the liver has two parts, the large right and the small left lobe. These two lobes are connected by the falciparum ligament, and between the lobes there is a between the lobes what you can see is the bag like structure, and the bag like structure is called as gallbladder, and the gallbladder is the site where the bile has been stored, which is being produced from the liver. Liver is made up of a large number of hepatic lobules, and approximately 1 million hepatic lobules are present in the liver, and these lobules are actually the structural and the functional unit of the liver. And each lobule, as you can see in the structure, that each lobule actually contains a central vein in the middle of the lobule, and the lobules are actually radially arranged along this central vein, and the hepatic cords are radially arranged along with the central lobe, and the hepatic cords are made up of specialized, these hepatic cords are made up of specialized cells called as hepatocytes. So, actually the liver is made up of these cells which are known as hepatocytes. The space between these hepatocytes are actually the space for the bile caniculi, and these bile caniculi which are joined together to form the bile ducts. So, hepatocytes are actually producing the bile, and which is collected into these canicules, and then these canicules actually transporting the bile through the bile duct. Hepatic lobules also contains, because the liver is the site where the many types of the food is the blood is going for getting the detoxificated. The liver also contains many different types of immune cells, such as Kupffer cells. These Kupffer cells are actually the macrophages which are required to kill the infectious organisms, and along with that it also contains the lymphocytes, which actually secretes the cytokines to generate a robust immune response. These two cells are actually required to give the protection within the liver from incoming the infectious organisms. In the hepatic cord, there is in the hepatic cord, what you see is actually a hepatic portal vein, a hepatic artery, a lymph vessels, and the bile duct. And bile duct, so this is actually a structure of one lobule. So, there are several such lobules present in the right side, and there are several such lobules present in the left side. So, the bile ducts which are coming from the left part of the liver and coming from the right side of the liver are combining together to form the hepatic ducts, and these hepatic ducts and the ducts coming from the gallbladder is giving rise to form the common bile ducts. And the common bile duct, as you have seen in the past also, that we have discussed, that this common bile ducts is actually combining with the pancreatic duct, and it opens into the ampulla of villi. So, what are the functions of the liver? So, function of the liver is to produce the bile. So, what are the functions of the liver? Number one, as we discussed that the liver is actually a major organ where the lot of different types of synthesis and breakdown happens. So, it actually synthesizes the large number of vitamins, and one of the such vitamin is that it synthesizes of the vitamin such as vitamin A. Number 2, because the liver has is also being served as a storage organ. So, it also stores different types of food material after the digestion. So, it stores vitamin, it also stores the carbohydrate and it also stores the fat. Also, it stores the, or it helps in synthesis of proteins. How it stores the carbohydrate and the fat is that it actually performs a function, a process known as the gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis means that the synthesis of glucose from the fat or the protein or protein. Similarly, it also, since I said that it stores the carbohydrate, it also stores the carbohydrate by the by a process known as the glycogenesis. So, glycogenesis means the conversion of glucose to glycogen. So, glucose is actually a monomer and glycogen is a polymer. Apart from that, liver is also used to synthesize the bile. So, bile which is being secreted or which is being synthesized from the liver is being stored into the gallbladder. As you can see in the PowerPoint slide, the gallbladder is like a balloon like structure or a storage bag, and it actually stores the bile which is coming from the liver. And whenever the alimentary canal requires the bile salts for helping for digesting the food, it actually put the biles into the small intestine through the opening. So, as you can see that bile duct actually attached to the pancreatic duct, and that is known as the common duct, and this common duct actually opens into the small intestine near the duodenum through the opening known as the ampulla of water. So, the question comes, what is the composition of bile? So, the composition of bile and the function what the bile has to do as we discussed, it contains approximately 98% water, contains inorganic salt of sodium, potassium and of sodium potassium bicarbonate. Then it contains bile salt of the sodium gluconate, sodium glyco the sodium taurocholate, these bile salts are required for many functions in the digestive system. Then it also contains a small fraction of lipids, mostly the cholesterol and phospholipids. And then at the end it contains the bile pigment, which is bilirubin and biliverdin, which is actually a oxidation product of bilirubin, and the pH of the saliva is slightly alkaline. So, it is in the range of 7.6 to 8.6. Okay. What is the function of bile? So, bile is actually required for the emulsification of fat. What is mean by emulsification is that it actually break down the fat into a smaller droplets, and that smaller droplets actually increases the surface area of fat, so that it actually get better action of lipases, and as a result the fat will be get digested easily. Number 2 is it actually neutralizes the acid from stomach. So, as we have just said that bile is actually slightly alkaline, and also the bile contains the inorganic salt of sodium and potassium potassium bicarbonates. So, once the acid comes from the stomach, these sodium and potassium actually reacts with the HCl present in the stomach, and that actually then they form the corresponding salt, and as a result it neutralizes the acid which is present in which is coming from the stomach, and neutralizes the pH. So, that the pH of the small intestine is suitable for the enzymes which are being secreted by the gastric glands. Number 3, it actually, since it contains a lot of antibiotic or antimicrobial substances, it actually also stop the growth of bacteria. Number 4, it also helps in activation of the enzyme which is required for the fat digestion. So, it actually helps in activation of lipases. Lipases are the enzyme which is required for the fat digestion. Apart from that, bile is also being used for many other functions, and that all these functions we are going to take up once we will discuss about the digestion process later on. So, now we will go back to the next organ, and that is called pancreas. Pancreas, as you can see in the given slide, pancreas is a soft, compact and lobulated and a grayish pink gland, and it lies between the stomach and the duodenum, and it is close to very close to spleen, and on average the pancreas has a length of approximately 12 to 15 centimeter, and the pancreas, the anatomically the pancreas has 3 regions. One is called the tail region, and the middle portion is called as the body portion, and the top portion is called as the head portion. The head portion is present within the curvature of the duodenum, and whereas the body portion lies just below the stomach, whereas the tail portion is extended towards the spleen. Pancreas has 2 different types of region for performing 2 different types of functions. One is called the exocrine part, and the other part is called as endocrine part. Exocrine part is actually consist of large number of lobules, and these lobules is made up of smaller cells known as acini. These acini are actually made up of smaller pyramidal like cells, and these acini are actually secreting the different types of pancreatic juice, and these juice actually contains many types of proenzyme as well as the active enzyme to help in the digestion process. On the other hand, the endocrine part is actually being focused within the islands of Langerhans. Islands Langerhans actually is made up of polyhedral cells, and it is also contains the blood capillaries. The purpose of endocrine part is to secrete different types of hormones from the different types of cells. So, endocrine part actually contains 5 different types of cells. Alpha cells, these alpha cells are actually present on the periphery of the gland, and they are actually secreting the hormone known as glucagon. The glucagon is actually regulating the glucose metabolism. Beta cells are actually present in the center of the endocrine part, and they are actually secreting the insulin, and as you know that insulin is actually a hormone which controls the glucose metabolism by converting the glucose into the glycogen, which the process which is happening in the liver. On the other hand, the third cells which are known as the delta cells, these are the cells which are present on the periphery of the gland, and they secrete the somatostatin. The somatostatin actually regulates the activity of alpha and the beta cells, and that is how the somatostatin is actually controlling the level of glucagon and insulin from the level of insulin and the glucagon from the pancreas. The fourth cell is known as the gamma cells. The gamma cells are actually the cells which secretes the gastrin, and the gastrin, as we have discussed when we were discussing about the stomach, that gastrin is required for stimulating the secretion of the gastric juices from the stomach glands. And the lastly at the end, it also contains the F cells, and these F cells actually secretes the pancreatic polypeptide. The pancreatic polypeptide is actually required to control the secretion of these endocrine hormones from the pancreas, as well as it also controls the overall secretion activity of the pancreatic cells. So, what are the functions of the pancreas? The function of pancreas is that it's do the two job. One is it secretes pancreatic juices that helps in digestion. Number 2, it secretes endocrine hormones, and that has the several different that has different types of effects. These endocrine hormones are actually regulating the metabolism. One of the example we have just says that it actually regulates the glucose metabolism. So, insulin is actually converting the glucose to glycogen, whereas glucagon is doing exactly the reverse. On the other hand, it also controls the secretion of gastric juices, and on the third is it also controls the secretion of pancreatic juices. Pancreatic juices contains different types of proenzyme and as well as the active enzyme to support the digestion, whereas the endocrine part is actually required to control the metabolism as well as to control the digestion part. Let us go to the third gland, and that is called as the intestinal glands. So, as you can see in the given slide, we have the intestinal glands, and these intestinal glands are actually present within the crypts of Limberhuen, and these glands are actually containing typically the different same set of cells which we have discussed when we were discussing about the gastric glands, except there are few differences. So, the intestinal glands actually contains 4 different types of cells. These cells are globulate cells. Globulate cells, as we have discussed in the past also, the globulate cells are actually required to secrete the mucus from the mucus, so that the inner lining of these glands are being protected from the digestive enzymes or the other kind of chemicals which are being secreted during the digestion and required for the digestive process. Then they have the Paneth cells. The Paneth cells are actually the cells which are required to secrete the lysozyme as well as the other antimicrobial substances. These antimicrobial substances as well as the lysozyme is actually killing the bacteria if there is any bacteria which is coming along with the food and it is reaching to the alimentary canal. So, it is like a kind of protection mechanisms. Then they have the, just like the gastric gland, they also have the enteroendocrine glands, endocrine cells, and they secrete the 2 different hormone. One is called secretin, the other one is called the serotonin, and these hormones we have they control the secretion of secretion of enzymes from these glands. And then they have the enzyme secreting cells. These enzyme secreting cells actually secretes different types of digestive enzymes, and these digestive enzymes actually is helping into the digestion of the digestion within the alimentary canal. So, with this we have completed the discussion about the anatomy of the alimentary canal, and what we have discussed so far is that the anatomy of the major organs such as the buccal cavity, stomach, small intestine and large intestine, and as well as the anatomy of the accessory glands such as the salivary glands, gastric glands, intestinal glands, liver and pancreas. And with this understanding, now we will move on and understand the digestion process which is happening in the stomach. Thank you.